Hello and welcome to the session. In today's session, we'll be discussing about the computer management portion of CSI-21. To begin with, what are the basic objectives of this particular session? Well, today I would like to describe to you what we mean by staff management, what we mean by organizational requirements, and what we mean by, or let us discuss some basic, I'll be discussing some of the basic concepts of strategic planning. But what is staff management? That is the first question which we have to answer ourselves. Well, staff management is basically, it involves, what kind of issues will it involve? Well, it will involve issue like staff recruitment, staff motivation, and staff administration. Now, these are the three key areas for staff management. That is recruitment, motivation, and administration. But what are the basic steps as far as recruitment process is concerned? Well, if I want to do recruitment, the first thing which we must understand is what is the definition. Well, the recruitment is the process of identifying the prospective employees, stimulating and encouraging them to apply for a particular job or jobs in an organization. So recruitment is not just recruiting somebody, but stimulating people to apply for a job so that you can get the right kind of people for a stipulated job. Well, if I'm talking about recruitment, what may be the basic steps in recruitment overall process? Well, it involves job description, selection criteria which are evolved and ultimately leads to selection, interviews, and finally the induction. So this is an overall process as far as recruitment is concerned. Now, if I want to do the job description, what I have to understand is what job description actually means to me and how it is done. Well, job description basically is a broad statement of purpose, duties, and responsibilities of a job or position. It is obtained from job analysis. Now, this is the basic definition, right? Now, if I want to obtain something from job analysis, then what should a job analysis contain? Well, job analysis is the process of examination of a job to identify its component, parts, and circumstances which it is performed. Now, this is a very trivial definition. In fact, we would like to elaborate this particular definition in the context that if I'm doing job analysis, for example, if I'm talking about the job of software engineer, then what I'm looking is what are the basic responsibilities which this particular gentleman has to take, what are the key roles this particular person has to take, what assets or what kind of human manpower this particular person has to manage, and so on and so forth. So all these things will be looked into in quite a details so that this particular person or the job of software engineer can be detailed to particular minutest detail, right? So what basically are the ideas which you come about as far as job description is concerned? Well, in job description, we come up with the very first thing is job title. It should indicate a close association with the expected job function. Now, here I would like to mention, if I am giving a title software engineer, I expect the person to perform all the activities of software engineering, which includes a little bit of project management and other activities which may be in the form of cost estimations, effort estimation, right? The analysis the design, the implementation oriented details, and so on and so forth. Even documentation to a certain extent. So, whenever I'm looking forward to a job title, I'm looking forward to that the job title should have very close relationship to the actual job which the person will be performing. And that is where the essence of job title lies. Second thing is reporting to. To whom is she or he reporting directly or responsible to? Reporting to him or her, job titles directly reporting to him or her. So basically by these two fields, by describing these two areas, what we are trying to tell that this particular person may be responsible, let's say, to a team leader, and there will be one or two programmers who might be assisting the software engineer in performing some of the hardcore programming oriented tasks. So by that we are just placing the person in the right perspective, not only defining the roles, the technical roles which this particular person may be taking, but also trying to identify where exactly this particular person may be pitched in the hierarchy of the organization, so that related roles and responsibilities can be linked to this particular person. Overall responsibilities is the next information which we would like to give it in details. Well, it conveys broad picture of the job and establishes the role of job holder and contribution he or she makes towards achieving the objectives of the company and her own function or unit. So in a nutshell, for example, if we are talking about a software engineer, we really need to say that this particular person may be responsible for, let's say, establishing a project plan, which we expect you to do in your project most of the time. Okay, so he or she will be responsible for that activity. The next thing which we need to do is, in the job description, is to identify the main tasks. Now, if we look into the list, what we have, identify and list the tasks. So first, identify what task a person has to perform. Analyze and group related tasks into a maximum of 8 tasks. Decide on the order of the above task on the basis of frequency, importance, or any other criteria. Describe each main task separately. Amplify with any quantitative measure. So what basically you are trying to do, for example, if you are trying to say that a software engineer will be responsible for designing, then are we expecting him or her to design starting from architectural level till to the minutest procedural level design, and then implementing those algorithms also, or are we just holding him responsible for, let's say, the architectural design? Probably not. Maybe the team leader may be asked to do that particular activity. The next level may be the data design, where we involve this particular software engineer. So all these narratives will go in the main responsibility. We may have a list of tasks, but we would like to define them as a list of a limited number of tasks which the software engineer has to do in the industry. So this is the way we would like to define the main tasks or the role played by the software engineer. Now I am ready with the basic job aspects of the software engineer. Now next thing, what should I do in the process of recruitment? Well, in the process of recruitment, probably now is the time for putting some selection criteria or selection procedure into place. Now what is selection? Well, selection is the process of securing relevant information from an application to evaluate her qualifications, experiences, and other qualities with a view to matching these with the requirements of a job. So what basically we are trying to do? We have identified the job description, and now we want to put the person into a particular kind of job. So that is the basic role we want to put in place. Now how to do that? Obviously, if I want to do this, what I need to put in place? I need to put in place a typical selection process. Well, you may find the selection process across various institutes, organizations may be different, but in a software organization, the selection process may be something like it may involve a preliminary interview. In the preliminary interview, somebody, or maybe in the form of a personal manager, basically goes through your biodata, your experiences, your responsibilities which you have undertaken, and try to assess your basic information to the suitability as far as attitude, experiences, and other things are concerned to an organization. Then you may be asked to fill up an application form, okay, which might be provided to you. Then you may have a selection testing. Now testing can be written or in the form of interviews, and finally, in case you are successful, you might get your employment in that particular organization. Well, if we want to talk about selection in slightly more details, then let us try to look into what do we mean by selection tests. Well, selection tests are basically a sample of an aspect of an individual's behavior, performance, or attitude. They are assessed with the help of a selection test. They also involve a systematic procedure for comparing the behavior of two or more persons. In fact, increasingly you are going to find that at the entry level, selection tests are considered to be quite essential, in the sense that they provide insight of students which normally an interview of 10, 15, 20 minutes may or may not be able to. Okay, so selection tests basically can be of many types, and they, for example, even they can be utilized to finding out typical attitudes by asking certain questions through the written examinations. Let us try to see what are the various types of tests which may be possible. Well, the very first in that category is achievement of intelligence. Tests, they are also called proficiency tests. They measure skill or knowledge acquired as a result of a training program and or on-job experience. Second test is aptitude or potential ability test, which basically measure the ability of a candidate to learn a new job or skill. So most of the time you will find many an organization will force you to take an aptitude test just to assess your some of the capabilities of various aptitudes. They just want to test it. And basically the idea is that according to your job profile, a typical level of aptitude is expected from individuals, and that's why in addition there may be requirement of certain skills. Okay, that is the intelligence level and all that. So they are put in place accordingly. So all the tests normally are the mixture of many form of test types. Some more type of test may be another personality test, basically which tests individual's value system. It helps in assessing a person's motivation and his or her ability to adjust himself or herself to the stress of everyday life. So like that, you are trying to test many things. Are there any other type of test? Yes, there are other type of tests in the form of interest test, which are designed to discover a person's interest and to identify the kind of work that satisfy him or her, used for vocational guidance and are accessed in the form of answers to well-formed questionnaires. So like that, most of these testing procedures are designed to assess a particular aptitude, skill, or your interest in a particular, even attitude in a particular way, and try to test your suitability in a given environment, thus giving some indicators which I think you may or may not be able to get with the help of interviews. In fact, many a times it is said that if you conduct a selection test, it makes the process of selection more methodical and less risky. So that way, for example, who has really performed well in a technical test or in a skill test probably is a good student most of the time, and that can be confirmed at the time of the interview. So the risks are a bit less of selecting the wrong kind of person for a given kind of job. Then we are talking about interviews. The interviews are performed for obtaining information, giving information. Now this is a very interesting stuff, and motivation. Well, a student has basically a candidate. You have tested him or her. Now it is your time to convince or motivate him or her for a typical kind of job. That is one of the job of the recruitment also, right? So it may be like interview may be utilized for these kinds of purposes also, in addition to getting information from a person on various topics and subjects. Now, there can be various kinds of interviews. In fact, you can perform many kinds of interviews, and you will undergo many of such kind of interviews when you will actually be facing some job interview or so. Well, the type of interviews can be informal. They can happen anywhere. You normally interview your teachers like that. Formal, well-structured questions are asked. Time and space are stipulated. Planned interviews, less planning than patterned. Then patterned interview, list of questions are asked one by one. The basic differences in the planned and patterned is that in patterned you have already established a flow of questions. In planned you have thought of how your interview will proceed, but then they are not patterned that all the questions may be asked in exactly the same manner. Probably in the patterned interviews are the ones when you are looking forward to a typical kind of just requirement or training kind of requirement, fulfillment of training, then you might have to go for those kinds of things. Non-directive interviews, where you are given just freedom to speak. You are given a topic and you are asked so many things about it. Depth interview, when subject-oriented, depth-oriented topics are performed. Stress interview, you are put under a lot of stress and asked many questions and in a very difficult situation. Group interviews, to study the group behavior, you are put into some kind of group forum and questions are posed to the group and answers are expressed from that. Panel interview, a panel interviews a person, and normally what you will find when you go to a software industry, there will be a panel. It can be, it's not necessary that all the time you will be exposed to panel interview, but you might sometimes have to go stress interview also. You sometimes have to go for a sort of technical interview where maybe depth interview, which we are calling. You might have to answer many questions relating to a particular subject area to a great depth, and so on and so forth. So, many of these kinds of interviews are possible. What happens after the interview? Well, you are rated. Interview ratings are given to you. And basically ratings, so these are very important points. These will help you not only later on, but while you are going for the interviews also. Physical makeup. In fact, the term makeup in this particular case is your outlook, physical outlook. It does matter. Your health, physique, age, appearance, speech. So most of the time you are properly dressed up for the interview. It does matter. Maybe a very little, but then it does matter. Attainments. What are your education attainments? What are your occupation training? And much is your experience? So what have you attained so far? That does matter. You should not hide any of the things which you have attained. Your biodata, your curriculum vitae should clearly specify the things which you have attained. You should not feel shy of these kinds of things. After all, you are going to go for an interview. Okay? Intelligence. Your basic intelligence are tested. Basically, it carries lot of skill. In fact, at that point of time, how do you respond to various questions with intellect? Maybe you do not know an answer, but still you try to answer it logically with utilizing your intellect. That carries lot of weightage. Special aptitudes. Written and oral fluency of expression. That does matter, although basically it is a matter in the interview. What you know is to be expressed. Okay, so that is one of the prime concern or prime rating as far as interviews are concerned. Other things may be your interests. They may be intellectual interest, practical, physically, whether you are physically active, social, artistic, all these kinds of things. Disposition, whether you are self-reliant, okay, motivations, level of motivation of yours, acceptability, circumstances, what are your backgrounds, experiences, that is future prospects, like that. All these things may carry some basic weightage, although it depends from place to place. For the job of software engineering, the main weightage may be your presentations, your intelligence, your subject matter expertise, all these things, and your experiences might be given a good number of rating or good rating, which might count towards the selection or non-selection. Then there are certain limitations related to interviews. What they can be? There may be prejudices. Interviewer may not like you at all. May be some prejudice against you. One characteristics of candidate may dominate appraisal. Now this is a typical case. You will find most of the time your presentation skills do dominate in the interview. Even if you are maybe lacking in some area, but presentation skills do dominate. Anyway, that is not the healthy side of the interview, because it should look forward to the job description part of it and try to relate it to the necessary skills, whether you have it or not. Then, once you have been interviewed, you will be, you have gone through the process of selection and you find that you have been selected. Now, what do we do? Well, once you have got an employment, the very first thing which is to be done, and which is not administration, it is just exposure to the job, is induction. You are inducted into the system. Sometimes you are given induction before you are even selected. Okay, so let us look into induction and orientation. Induction introduces an employee to a job to make employee feel proud of his or her association with the company. So induction, these are the prime concerns or prime objectives of induction. You are you are told very good things about the companies. You feel really good about. You feel proud. And ultimately you will find these things help the climate, motivational climate of an organization, and definitely help you in work. Other things which are there is the induction program covers the company's history and products, process of production and major operations, significance of job, structure of organization and various functions, employees department and its jobs. So these are some of the basic things which an induction program may like to cover. Some more things induction program may cover. They may include personal policy and sources of information. If you are stuck, where you find more information. Company policies, practices, objectives, regulations, term and condition of services, amenities and welfare facilities, rules and regulations about hours of work, safety and accident prevention. So almost all the aspects relating to your job are expressed, told to you, which you are expected to practice during the job, during whatever activity you are taking. Okay. And they are very important. I think some of the very common things, if we look forward to, you might be asked to send or download information from authorized resources, right? So that viruses and all that do not get downloaded to your servers or do not come, and there is no possibility. You will be expected to send or send emails which are properly structured in a typical format to outside. Even the emails, etc., some organization do screen the emails, etc., which have been sent by you or which are being received by you, just to ensure that they are in the proper format and they convey proper kind of messages. They also ensure that you are visiting, browsing proper kinds of sites which are helpful in the development of overall organization. So all these things does matter, and all these things are put in place with the help of induction program. In addition, grievance procedure and discipline handling, social benefit and recreation services, opportunities, promotion, transfers, suggestion schemes and job satisfaction. All the things are told to you, and you are expected to practice it. In fact, if put it in a particular way, they are the first step towards better staff motivation, right? And that's what we would like to discuss in more details. But if I want to define motivation, or if I want to describe about motivation, the first question is, what is the definition? Well, the literal meaning of motivation is incitement or inducement to act or move. However, in the industry, it means to make a subordinate act in a desired manner, act in disciplined, efficient and productive manner. In fact, many a times you will hear complaint that my subordinates do not work. That is not a good kind of complaint. That tells us that probably we are unable to motivate them enough to perform their duties in an efficient and better manner. So probably that talks about the failure on the part of the manager rather than failure on the part of the employees. I hope you won't be making any of those kinds of complaints, but definitely you will be striving hard that there is a motivational climate in your organization. But how do we determine, in day-to-day life, that my people are motivated enough? Well, determination of motivation is a result of three groups of factors. Individual must know the aims, objectives and values of the employees. Human needs are both numerous and complex. That's a very strong statement to make. Others may be organizational components, that is, organizational structure, technological system, physical facilities affect motivation. So they do affect. External variables, a strong role played by culture, customs and norms. You really feel good in an organization which follows certain culture. Okay, and there is a typical activities, attitude, things goes on in an organization. You will find it in software industry. Most of the software industry has a very good environment to work with. Who can be considered a motivated worker? You have to watch for it. One who wants to come to work and works willingly. When at work, she or he gives his or her best, has a definite sense of belonging and pride in the organization and in the improvement of management effectiveness. Very important factors. How do you see that? You see in the work of the people. When they are working, you can feel it among the people. By talking to them, you can feel it. Okay? The number of suggestions which are coming to you from your subordinates sometimes tells you that whether they are motivated enough or not. Indicators of demotivation. Increasing absenteeism, low output and productivity, rank indiscipline, frustration and unrest in workforce, defiant and violent behavior of workers, non-cooperation, strikes. These are all the indicators of demotivation. How do we know, or how do we create a motivational climate? Well, motivational climate is a climate where workers' energies are not expanded totally in meeting their basic needs. This is a climate for interdependent work rather than dependency. A competitive climate through recognition of good work. So this is a motivational climate which you might like to see. Other aspects may be a productive climate through personal example, a climate of approach and problem solving rather than avoidance. Motivate individuals through guidance and counseling. So all these things tells that there exists a good motivational climate. And finally, in a staff management environment, we perform the performance appraisal of the individuals. Now, performance appraisal is very important. Why? Well, this is the process through which an individual employee's behavior and accomplishment for a fixed time period are measured and evaluated. the major purpose is to assess the worth and value. So this is a very important factor. This involves systematic and objective way of judging the relative worth of or ability of employee in performing his or her tasks, review the performance of individuals and progress in job, and assessing his or her potential for future improvements. So that becomes a very important activity. What are the major objectives of the performance appraisals then? They are: performance appraisal is needed for efficient management of business organization. They are needed for, in fact, needed by manager to help an employee's performance, and needed by the job holder to assist him or her to evaluate own performance and to self-develop. In fact, most of the time, the appraisal should be taken as an improvement activity rather than as a punishing activity. In fact, the appraisals are conducted to tell us what may be lacking in us, so that we can strive and try to overcome that kind of a problem. If we are improving every year, there is absolutely no need for taking any bad measures against anybody. In fact, they are not taken at all by the management. However, if the appraisals of people are going continuously from good towards the worst side, then there is an indicator that there is something seriously wrong. Most of the time, it is in the problem is found with the environment, because most of the time workers are good and we are the workers, so we are always good that way. Anyway, but that is something which an organization has to decide and take care. Now, what are the basis of appraisal? They can be work quality, reliability, cooperation, job knowledge, initiative, attitude, and safety consciousness. The last one is very important. We forget the safety consciousness most of the time. Rest all are trivial aspects as far as appraisals are concerned. But safety is driving the software industry these days. We are moving, in fact, the basic objective of instilling software engineering in the industry was that the software were less and less reliable. And as the changes were being made, they were becoming increasingly less reliable over the period of time, and they were at the verge of breaking down. What do we say? Break down in terms of the software? Well, no more usable. It introduces so many problems. One particular change and the software becomes totally usable, because it changes the entire software altogether. And it might be a better idea to write a whole complete new re-engineered software, which may be better in most of the context, and properly freshly designed kind of software which contains all the basic aspects of software engineering. Well, what are the basis of appraisals? They are attendance. Most of the time, even in your telelearning center, the first appraisal is your attendance, and you are expected to have 75% attendance, right? Learning ability, how much you have learned from the given stimulus. So it may be in the form of several questions which may be asked by supervisors at various point of time from various places. Health and physical conditions. These may be requirement at several places. However, even in software industries, they have several significant role to play. Your health is key. In fact, many a software organization these days encourage you to take some break in between, go to nearby gym or health club and come back totally refreshed and rework many things. I mean, there is a common room, there is a common chamber, and maybe it involves some kind of physical activity too. So many companies are moving on to that kind of a domain too. Adaptability. How do you change yourself to given situations? Judgment and responsibility. How much you take the responsibilities to be. It is recommended to select the performance criteria on the basis of job. However, if we take the software industry, the main tasks may be the learning ability. How much? Because if I am talking about software engineer, the first and the foremost things is the analysis phase, planning and analysis phase. And over here, the adaptability is very important. Learning ability is very, very important. Your judgment and responsibility is very important. Health, safety, slightly less important maybe, but then appraisals on those aspects may be there for some extent. Okay, and attendance in software industry, in fact, in the initial years of yours, you devote more than 8 hours in the software industry. That is the common trend in the industry. You end up devoting because the environment is so congenial that you like working. Okay. So that way all these criteria fit very well in the software environment. So what we tried to see was the staff management, and the typical example which we have tried to cover is relating to the software industry. And what we have seen that some of the key things which are important in an organization is recruitment, follow the proper procedure, then you go on to do some kind of creation of motivational climate, and ultimately the appraisal is very important. Now with this information, let us move on to the next important characteristics in a computer management aspect, and that is organizational requirements. Now what do we mean by organizational requirements? Well, if I am talking about organizational requirement, the very first thing which I should talk about is the structure of my organization. That is how my organization is. And then I should talk about some of the basic financial or planning and related aspect, that is budgeting, control in that particular organization. So these are the most common organizational requirements which I must understand for an organization. Well, the first thing in that context we should know is the organizational structure. Now, organizational structure is a formal, established pattern of relationships among the various parts of an organization. Formal in this context implies deliberately specified and adopted. Established in this context means clearly spelled out and accepted, although can change with time. So this is an organizational structure. Now this is the rudimentary definition. I would like to know some more details about it. Well, to know more details, first thing I must define is the relationships. A structure can be based on relationships only if they exhibit a certain degree of durability and stability. The formal relationships in an organization are described in an organizational chart. So first thing I must understand is the organizational chart. Now let us look at how an organizational chart may look like in a typical organization. Well, this is a hierarchical chart which we see where the Vice Chancellor is the head of an organization who controls electronic media production center, and pro-vice chancellors. Pro-vice chancellors may then control various divisions, schools of an organization, which also includes the telelearning centers and so on and so forth kind of a thing. So an organizational structure is the foremost or the first indicator of an organizational structure. But what are the disadvantages of organization charts? The organization chart is an abstract illustration of structure, just an abstract illustration. To overcome this disadvantage, it can be supplemented with job description of each position. The degree of authority of superior to subordinate is not indicated in the chart. The relationships among two equal levels is not reflected. So these are the major disadvantages. Now there can be formal and informal organizations. Well, informal and formal organizations, they operate together to form a total organization. The formal structure specifies specific departments, activities, people and reporting relationships. So these are the formal things which we need to specify. Informal structure refers to social group or friendship among people, which basically are very conducive for working in an organization. So not only the formal structure, but informal structures are equally important in an organization. Now, being part of an informal organization, if you want that, then informal communication network versus formal circular memos are to be equated, may form groups that respond to fast changing environment. So you want these kind of requirements over there. Sometimes help in evolving work ethics and values. So informal organization may be quite useful in a software industry kind of a situation. The task differentiation in an organization. So once we know about the basics of organization, how do we differentiate among various tasks? Well, tasks are differentiated by functions. The activities are grouped according to functions such as production, marketing, finance. Most commonly used in business organization and non-commercial organizations such as universities, most suited when organization is dealing with single product. In a software organization, when you are software developers, then probably you are not distributing it with the sales, marketing or that kind of function. But if you are a software product designers and so on and so forth, and you have lots of custom-made products also, then probably you would like to differentiate it with that kind of a setup. Even in a software houses also, you have your marketing or the teams which are differentiated from your core teams which are responsible for ultimate system analysis or so. And these marketing teams normally commute with or talk to us, and they normally try to sell certain software which is to be developed, maybe have to be developed. Meanwhile, they call when they normally call their technical team people also for doing that kind of a job. What are the basic advantages of such kind of a distribution of work? It allows specialization of work, ensures most efficient utilization of human resources, concentration of authority in top men, thus no conflict arising out of the different authorities. The hierarchy lines are clearly defined. So these are the major advantages if you distribute responsibility with the help of functions. Okay, now there may be, however, certain disadvantages which always go along with the advantages. They may be function specialists. Functional specialists often lose sight of the overall organizational objective and work for narrow function objectives. No, it is still a teamwork, non-coordination among functional departments, having their unique set of constraints and problems. So these are some of the major disadvantages. So can we do differentiation by some other means? Yes. Differentiation by product also is there. It is recommended in case an organization has large number of vastly different products. So you produce some product for financial segment market, some product for network segment market. Probably you would like to distribute organization or divide organization on the basis of products. A marketing team may be divided into these kinds of aspects. The structure revolves around the product line in these kinds of cases. Okay. What are the advantages for these kinds of organization distribution? It facilitates utilization of specialist machinery and technological processes, permits greater coordination in case of specialist customer services, enables product manager to be responsible for profit generation of their own department. Now profit generation has become a de facto standard and it is to be followed everywhere. It leads to duplication of managerial manpower, leading to high costs, requires strong leaders to control various groups so that organizational objectives are followed. Meanwhile, there seems to be a phone call. Is this related to the subject?
I am from TLC 0008.
Yes. What is your question, please?
I am Sanjeev Kumar, sir.
Yes, Sanjeev. Please ask your question.
Yeah, sir. You have defined organization. The term organization.
Yes.
I want to know what is the basic difference between a formal organization and non-formal organization.
Well,
and
yes. Any other question, please?
Sir, why there is different process for different organizations for selecting a particular candidate?
Okay, fine. Thank you. Let me answer both of your questions.
Okay.
Now, let me repeat the questions for you. The two questions which I would like to answer first, I would like to answer the question relating to staff. What the question raised by your colleague happens to be why there is a different procedure at different places in various organizations. Once again, what you should look forward to the job description. Many a times, the job descriptions or the requirements of various organizations differ. There may be a situation when the organizational objectives are just the software development. Now, if the organizational objectives are just the software development and that kind of a software are to be produced for various vendors, clients, then in that particular case, a typical job analysis will reveal that we require people who will be more accustomed to situations such as they should be able to solve problems, they should be able to exhibit a good behavior in a group and should be able to elicit responses from various customers, right? So we want that kind of a skill from a particular person. Now, if you want that kind of a skill from a particular person, obviously your job description is going to be entirely different. And once your job description is entirely different, obviously you are going to follow a typical procedure that determines that kind of a behavior. Now, if I want to determine, for example, behavior of marketing, I would like to look into the skill of how you approach to various people, how is your spoken skills are, and whether you can describe a utility or product. Now, I'll be asking you during the selection test which determines this kind of a behavior. In the first case, the technical ability to interact in a group become very important. So all the questions will be oriented towards that kind of a thing. Obviously, a different procedure. Over there, you will have to undertake a technical test. In this particular thing, in the marketing case, you might have to undertake a test which will require a group discussion and giving description of a particular event. So like that, the procedures in various organizations will be quite different from different places. Number 2, the second question asked was relating to differences between formal and informal organization. Well, first thing, I'll give you a very brief reply on this. In fact, I will not directly answer the question. I am giving you a situation. You go to a particular software industry. Now, what do you expect in a software industry? Whenever there is a discussion, okay, suppose a software is to be developed. How the team reacts in that kind of a situation? A particular software is given to the, or a particular situation is given to the group. Group interacts, decides about the functioning of the group within that particular setup, okay, and then they come up with a typical kind of solution. Now that's a typical informal style of organization, right? You have a problem, you circulate the problem among yourself through email, you ask everybody to think about it. There is no formal communication that you have to do this particular activity in that, or you have to do this particular activity. Over the period of time, you come back, sit in a place, okay, may not be formally sitting in it's not a formal meeting. You sit, share your experiences and come up with a solution. Meetings are totally unscheduled. They are problem oriented. You stuck with the problem, you request everybody to think about that particular problem and initiate the meeting. Who initiates the meeting? It can be you, your boss, or anybody. Now that's a typical informal organizational behavior. On the other hand, if there is a formal organization, there may be a written document which is being issued that this is particular meeting which is to be held at 11:30 on this particular date at this particular time, and these are the agendas, predefined agendas, and you are supposed to report. Who initiates that particular thing? The coordinator or the, let's say, the chairman for that particular meeting, right? Now that is the basic difference between the two. The work culture, the style of working. As far as from answering to this particular question in an exam is concerned, well, you have sufficient reading material on that kind of a thing. And if still you feel that you want to discuss more, you can have an email-based discussion with us. Well, with this, at present, we have to sum up this particular session here itself because of we are coming to end of 1 hour of presentation and discussion. What we have discussed in this particular session is the basic staff management process. In fact, staff, how to manage the staff, how to recruit the staff, and so on and so forth has been discussed in quite a details, and thereafter we discussed about the basic organizational